Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Ripster Daily Trading Recaps and Teachings. Just a quick introduction before I start. So guys, these are the recaps and the teachings from the trades we take in my community, or any trade I share on Twitter or I share in my community. Any trade that I am taking or anyone in my community traders are taking. So we're going to discuss those and how we made money, how we lost money, and we always do repeatable setups. We have a fixed system, we have a fixed setup. We do not trade randomly. If our system tells us it's a long, we long. If it tells us short, we short. That's how we trade. Every morning before the pre-market, couple of hours before that, my team, we are up early. We go through all the new sources, upgrades, downgrades, and create what we call as a watch list. Today I was a little late though. Today I was late, but still we were able to create a quick game plan for us today. And this was our game plan. There were not many game plays today. There was Target, Neo, AVAV, GTLB, AMD, few of those, and then we also create what we call as the market levels. So these were our market levels. Based upon these levels, we can trade long or short using our Ripster EMA Clouds. You clearly can see today we can discuss some levels on Microsoft, Netflix, AVGO. We will talk about those trades and see how they worked out around those levels. So I'm just gonna keep the introduction a little small today, and I'm gonna go right into our first trade that we did in the community. All right, we're gonna start with the loser of the day today. So this happens, right? So let's see why AMD was a loser and what was the plan. All right, so the plan on AMD was simple. We had a news, we had support pivot of 200, 198.60, we had resistance pivot of 203. So trade was versus the 200 level and long over 200, short under it, or if it rejects 203. So even though it was a starter size, because until and unless we break the pre-market lows, it's not completely a short. But still I gave it a try. I was like, I can add a starter, and as you know from my previous recaps, and if it breaks the pre-market lows 199, we will add into the starter. Because market was heavy, market was weak, and so I was looking for the AMD short. So that's what we did. As soon as market opened, I started a short starter, and right away it started to get over the clouds, and I closed the short because it was, I quickly closed as soon as it started to push over the clouds. I took my $1.50 loss on the starter and I got out. And then again it was the next 10-minute candle was again wiki. It tried to push down, and that's when I tried to short it again, because if it's a amateur move on the upside and then again rejection, so I was trying to build myself again for that short. Probably that one was probably not a good idea, but you get biased on something sometimes, so you have to fight that bias. So I got short again, but right away it got back over the clouds again. So at that time I was done with it, right? So I was done with it. You can see that I was done with it in first 25 minutes because it did not break the clouds, it held the clouds. And then I guided my traders who were long. I personally didn't long it, but many traders were long, because again, the plan was either to long or short. So plan was either to long over 200 or short over 200. So maybe if I didn't short the second time, I could have longed it, but the traders were long on 200. So my traders who were long on the 200, they were doing it right. It moved over the clouds. They were doing it right, and I gave them 205 target. So it exactly met close to over 204.99, 205 target. So that was a good scalp, and you can see right after meeting my target, timestamp target here, it came right back down. So you see how it was a loser for me. Even though if I had went long like I do all the time, I would have recovered my losses. But that's fine. It was by plan. It was by plan risk. The size was small, and they just held it. The market makers just held it. They did not want AMD to break down today, so they held it all day right at that level. And we will talk about how market was weak, but AMD still held that level. That was end of day AMD 3450 curl. That's another repeatable setup, end of the day. And we'll talk about the end of day reversal as well in this video, later in the video. But the point to understand here is how you could have traded it. Other thing I was telling you that once I was out with those two losses, I don't touch it. I don't care if it's fading. You know, it was coming back. If I try to short again, I would have lost money. And I couldn't long because it was choppy. So I just left it alone for my sanity purposes. So I always do that. So whenever I'm playing a stock, it doesn't work for me a few times, I just leave it alone because I will get emotional if I try to trade it again and again. So anyways, guys, that was an AMD loser this morning. You know, and we learn from it, and then we'll do better tomorrow. Let's go to the next one. So next one we are going to discuss is AVAV. Before I discuss how we traded it intraday, let's go back, look at the earnings report that I shared yesterday on Twitter. Let's look at that. So the earning report yesterday on AVAV, it was 90% year-over-year growth. Revenue is growing 40%. So that's really good. And it beat the consensus on both, right? And guidance was in line. FY24 guidance was slightly below. But if you look at the quarter per quarter, their revenue is growing. So very bullish. So very bullish. Now let's look at the chart. So I did tweet out that it's a great investment stock. So let's look at the chart. So chart wise, it's at all-time highs. So what does it make it? It makes it all-time high, repeatable setup. All-time high, repeatable A+ setup. So now let's go back, see what was my guidance in the pre-market. So support was 150, resistance was 158. I said we only long over 150 and gap fill under 150. Good thing to note is whenever the chart is at all-time highs and it has such a good earnings, not always it will fill the gap. The gap long is much higher probability and a better trade. And let's see what happened. Let's go back. Let's see what happens on AVAV. So we can see. So as soon as the market opened, AVAV, I was watching it, it was holding 150. You know why it was holding 150, and it pushed from the 150, it started to push, and as you see in the pre-market note, I said we trade over 150. I was little late, but I still got it on the next candle when it started to push, and then the breakout, add a little more on the breakout. That's when I said long over 150. Although a lot of traders, you know, who were quicker than me, they were already long because that was the real good entry at 150, right? But it was breaking the pre-market highs, and that was a long breakout. And then, you know, you hold it into the 10 a.m. trend, you first push to 165. Even if I was late, let's say I was, you know, at 158, then, you know, size a little smaller, and my risk should be either 155, you know, or 150, but that 150 becomes a little wider risk. But then still from 158, I got my 165 target. Right, that was into 10 a.m. So that was the 158 target. Now let's look at what was my next target. I said I logged 1/3, and the next target I gave everybody was 167.50, and the 167.50 target met. Then my final target, or not final, my main target was 170, and you met 170 target. All targets met, and then I said you can use the profits to roll further. 170 calls went 150%. So you see, and then I was out when it broke this 512s, how with the fundamentals being an A+ setup, and we have done it again and again and again. If you remember, we had traded, which was, I don't, you know, if I recall, was it a DUOL or something, you know, in the past, that was A+ all-time high breakout repeatable setup. If I was not like too focused on AMD chop, I would have sized really good on AVAV. But this was really good. I'm proud of the traders who executed it really nice. So next one we are going to talk about is target. So let's see what was the plan on target in pre-market. So our pre-market planning on target was support pivot 157.65, resistance pivot 167.20, neutral to bullish versus 158, no long under 158. So we had our clear defined risk of 158, and then breakout was our pre-market highs. This one was a little tricky, you know, you could not size too much because if you see this pre-market level, how it was uneven, right? It was not like peaks and valleys in a horizontal fashion, so it becomes a little tricky to risk here. But regardless, you could trade this breakout long which which was kind of working. You could risk the low of the day candle, size small, and hit our 170 target, but I was looking for 170, 136, and when it broke down and then had to exit. So luckily it was didn't lose there, neither did make much, because my target was 171. We still had a decent move, right, from this 161.50 breakout to 170 if you were quick. But if you did not take your profits at 10 a.m. and it pulled back here, and I told everyone it's just retesting this breakout. You see this area? It was just a retest, and it held that breakout, and then bounced, again from 167.35 back to 169. I mean, it was decent for that scalp, because you're risking here $1 or $1.50, and you were making like $1.50, like kind of 1-to-1 trade there, and then nothing special. But if you traded the opening breakout, that was decent. Didn't get the whole day move. I didn't get this and later in the day push as well, but overall it was okay. Could have been a really good trade if you had a good timing on scalp, but again didn't really have a good entry and consolidation, but decent for the scalps, and daily is decent. GTLB, let's look at GTLB. I actually missed this one right at open, so but I guided my community about this trade, how it was working. So GTLB plan was simple. Support pivot was 55.60, resistance pivot was 60. Over the clouds, look for B minus bounce. Under the clouds, under 55.60 is a short, and it pushed right away. Right at open, it pushed. I was not focused on this one. But if you trade it over the clouds, as I said, it's a B minus push, and you got really good move there. You got, if you were fast enough, you really got, even if you were over the clouds, you're risking this low of the day at the opening scalp, 5-minute scalp or 10-minute scalp, you could have gotten easily $3 to $4 on this trade and then get out. Of course, you don't want to add it when it's like high up here into the gap. So it was a little too fast. Already made the move, and from the B minus from the pre-market notes, and then I said if breaks cloud, avoid it, and when it breaks cloud at 61 bucks, it comes back to 158.50. We'll watch it tomorrow. Pretty daily bearish, and we will watch it for a day too short. Next one, we are going to look at Tesla. This was all win guidance today in the community. It was all the win guidance. So on the Tesla, let's go back and see what were our levels on Tesla first, right? So Tesla was bearish, of course. The support on Tesla was 180 and 180, 190. So these were support levels, and resistance was this cloud rejects. And as soon as Tesla breaks that level, and it's bearish, right? Market is bearish, and it's breaking the pre-market lows, that 181 level, then it breaks 180 level. So when Tesla breaks this pre-market low, it's a short, and I was on a voice as well talking about that, how Tesla is a short. We talked about this daily candle on yesterday video as well, how it was breaking down, and I did talk about how it's a short next day. I actually avoided initially. I avoided it, and it was not my trade. It was Win's trade, because I didn't want to chop, because this gap down had taken a lot of the meat out of this trade, and I didn't want to trade this chop. But when it finally gave up, that was it, right? 181, the level we gave in the pre-market, and then there was just a nice short scalp to 177.57. You size small, let it work, and look at that move, right? So you can see the timestamp guidance by Win right here. Tesla short, beautiful trade. Next one, we're going to look at SOFI. I had it on my watch list this morning, but I personally didn't make any solid plan on it, except for that I gave the level support pivot 760, resistance pivot 810, and once that support pivot was gone, you could even have this support pivot high at 770. Then it faded all day, right? And 810, you can see that rejection at 810. You can clearly see that rejection at 810. So it was a nice short setup. Yeah, I mean, it was one of those days I was probably not prepared well this morning, but it was a good risk reward, especially with the market was so bearish, right? So look at this, look at this trend line break, 50 EMA break. When 50 EMA breaks on daily, it's usually very bearish. So remember that 50 EMA break on daily is bearish. break over, it's bullish. Very important. 3450 clouds or 50 EMAs, make sure you keep eyes on them. 3450 cloud on day. So let's talk about Microsoft today. So Microsoft was the one of the best shorts, and I could see the weakness, and I could see that QQQ is failing, SPY is failing, everything is just failing. So I could tell that this was real weak. You know, it's a really weak stock, and that's why I've been, you know, shouting on the voice that's the best short. I told everybody at 958 that it's still heavy, and keeping QQQ also heavy, hold a bit. 405 was the level to cover. Then I told everybody 403s, and I even said we are going to 400, right? Leave the last runners to 400, and we did see close to 400. So if you see all the way from 411, 410 to 400, even if you had a late entry risking 412s pre-market low resistance, you could have made a decent money there. It's all about the idea guidance. We are not, you know, and my focus is not giving the alerts. That's not what I'm here to do. So it's all my guidance, you know. Sometimes my ideas don't work, sometimes they are working. It's all about how the traders are using those repeatable setups and guidance. We clearly know the clouds are bearish, the Ripster levels are bearish, so we just have to follow that, right? Broke 20 EMA on daily. We'll keep eyes on tomorrow. If it bounces, you know, it has some room to bounce to if it gets over 4 or 5, we'll watch it tomorrow. Will be interesting. So let's talk about these short scalps in the morning. So SMCI was also heavy, and I'll talk about how we shorted the market all day guidance, but I told everybody that break of 1009,000 will be you know, short. Even a pop into 1050 will be a short. So that's what I told everybody in the morning, and you can see we popped into 1050 area, we rejected, and then we, you know, we pulled down, initial bounce for 1000, and then we faded. You can't have 10 $5 stops on it. SMCI needs a $20 stop, right? Even if you shorted at under $1,000, kept 1020 as your risk, and then it could have faded to my two targets were 983 and 972. You can see here, and we met the first target, and you know, and then we met 983. We didn't 983 we met, we didn't really meet 963, and after that it reversed. And let's talk about how in a community traded a reversal trade. So right when SMCI was consolidating, let's look at Tape's commentary, right? So when SMCI was consolidating, Tape talked about how the inclusion next Friday, and we can have a bounce leading into the inclusion, and what he said was correct. Everything was tanking, bearish, but SMCI became bullish, irrespective of the market. I mean, amazing guidance by Tape. Even, you know, even I couldn't take the reversal, and then, you know, he was you can see his guidance, and you can see the timestamp on the reversal, and you see how it talks about the imbalance, and that was the reason why SMCI was strong, because of the inclusion next week, and the, you know, the funds and institutions and imbalance that it causes, that they have to buy it. So let's see, you know, of course it was short on coin. So let's see. And the thing Tape focus was on 1 hour chart. So if you focus on 1 hour chart, you can clearly see a bounce of 1 hour 50 EMAs or 1 hour support. That's what Tape is talking about, right? So if you see, traders are asking him, how did you get the confidence to long it at 995 and all the way to 135, you know, $40? Because he mentioned that it was because of the clouds. 1 hour clouds held the 3450. So you could see that everything has a reasoning, you know, and you see it held and it flagged under 3450, nice little kind of a cup and handle, and then flagged more over 3450 and ended up squeezing big end of the day. So that was the midday curl. That was very impressive, and that was the reasoning by Tape. So you know, so it was very impressive. Even though we were in a gap on daily chart, it held the gap and it held the 1 hour. So 1 hour chart he used to trade it, and after that it was just to trade the clouds intraday. Very proud of Tape, a great asset to our community. So quickly I'm going to talk about Snow. Snow was not that much about being short Snow, but Snow was about preserving the capital, because Here's the thing, everybody wanted snow. They wanted to long snow because everybody likes snow, and they say it's too cheap, fell from 230. Nothing is too cheap. There's nothing like that. So I strictly told everybody, do not long snow. Snow was also a day 2 setup, right? So yes, it was a day 2 short setup as well. And look at my warning at 10 a.m. You know, even at 10 a.m. it fell like $4. Even then I said, do not long, do not long. And then from that area I said we go to 165, and we almost hit 166.36. You know, it tried to bounce, fake out, but you know, probably stopped out. But it's all day fade, bearish. It's under 34.50. 1 hour is bearish, 10 minute is bearish, daily is bearish. So there's no long there. Remember that. A lot of accounts were, you know, glad a lot of traders did not touch it in our community. I'm just going to quickly look at some of the trades that traders were taking in the community, not my trades. One was Netflix, another was AVGO. So look at this, right? And let's go look at the one daily candle on AVGO. This is pretty bearish candle. You see that how it's you know, the sellers came in and dumped it right down, and all day there was not even a single bounce. We have earning coming up, and you know, this is, I don't know, maybe people are, you know, locking in the profits before the earnings. But let's look at our levels, right? The levels on AVGO was 130.91 and 1406. So basically it was this 1400 psychological break. You can see the 50 EMA also breaking on the 1 hour chart. So everything was bearish, 1 hour, 10 minute. So it was a good solid short in the community by the traders. Another one which I saw some traders really executing well was Netflix. Very proud of this one. You know, let's see what were our levels. Levels on Netflix was 609, 612, and once that 609 was gone, that's it. You know, and you know, we're going to talk about the market, how market was weak, and when market is weak, you short all the tech stocks. If QQQ is heavy, you short all the tech stocks. Pick any. Yes, I was focused on Microsoft, but you could short any, Amazon, Netflix. And AVGO was weak because you know, the semiconductors, it was probably weak because the earnings, you know, profit locks ahead of the earnings. Otherwise semiconductors were holding up, but Netflix was definitely great, and you know, great, very happy with the, you know, a lot of traders in the community, Steaks, AA, you know, follow the rules. A lot of people, pajama trader, really did good on Netflix. Very proud of everyone. All right, let's look at SPY QQQ. All right, so the best trade today was, guys, shorting the market all day, no long on the market. We were just short, right? So you can see I started to talk about it in the morning, 9:32. I said heavy for short scalps. You will not see a lot of guidance here because I was on the voice, and today was just phenomenal day. You could literally make a full week profit just staying short on the market. You know, and it was not in only the community. I guided all my Twitter followers as well on the short all day because you know, the trend was weak, and here comes our VIX SPY strategy. What did I tell everyone? That if VIX is over 14, we stay short. It's that simple. It is that simple. It's not complicated. You have my previous videos as well on VIX SPY strategy. You can watch that, how we nail big on the red day, right? So if VIX goes over 14, or I know we have other tools as well, like we watch yields, we watch you know, bonds, we watch US dollar, but today it was more about the VIX, right? So that was the key. So and even the bounce in the end, when it rejected 15, that was the 15 scalp bounce. So if you want to see here, let's see what I was saying. So what I was saying was, let's go in the morning tweets, right? So let's just go back and see what I was saying in the morning. So let me find that. But anyways, this was the midday where I was saying VIX SPY strategy and all day guidance, all signals red. I clearly said still red. And then we had this midday. We try to reverse, you know, we try to play that reversal. I covered all my short here, you know, I told everyone I'm out here. I didn't scalp this, but I did scalp end of the day this flush, right? And that's what a lot of the traders did, because only if I remove the drawings, only time it tried to turn bullish was this, and that failed. Yes, we could have tried long here, but you get out right away and then you short, make more money there, right? So all you had to do is, and the first thing I told everyone in the morning, that today is a bearish bias. Bearish bias. That's the bias on the market. And what does our system tell? Clouds are bearish, 512 is bearish, the labels are bearish, VIX is high. What else you need? There was no long except this bounce. That was also a C minus bounce. It was not an A plus. The A plus was short all day. You can clearly see all day my guidance to say short, 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 short. You know, I mean, and you could short this, you could short Netflix, you should Microsoft, because the whole market was red. You could short snow. That's how you make exponential money following the trend. Anybody who was buying against the trend today lost a lot of money, and I try that nobody does it in my community, and that in my community everybody stays with the trend. If we lose, that's fine. We lost on AMD and a few other trades, that's fine. We lose with our high probability trade. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Nothing works all the time. But the point is, we need to preserve, need to stay with the trend. You know, size small, find the risk level and short it accordingly. You know, the links about all the SPY VIX strategies are, you know, I'll try to link here as well, but it's all on my free website. You can learn the SPY VIX strategy. You know, it has you know, changed a lot of lives. People from my SPY VIX strategy, it has literally changed so many lives. And I think I did a recap a few days back on that as well. I did this week recap on SPY VIX sometime back. You could see that, you know, when this happened and we were VIX SPY, how it worked with SPY and VIX. And today it was all about 15 level. So today it was all about 14 level, sorry, and then the 15 reject. So that was the key today. And as I said, you know, let's see if I can show you guys that. Okay, here you go. So here you can see VIX over 15. I said I will cover the 15. I'm just trying to find the 14 for you. Right, so here you go. I said if VIX stays over 14, we will have all day pressure. That's simple. And that's what we had. VIX 14 to 1450. And then VIX goes to 15. And that's the time you get to start thinking about getting out. That's what I told everybody. That 15, I'm going to get out. And then you, because VIX is fading and it's going, then you could have scalped at the end for this long scalp. Not going fully long, just a scalp. But you could see how all day the VIX was fading and we were VIX was going higher and we were staying long. Just focus on the SPY VIX strategy, right? So it should be on my website as well. I cover it in detail. You can go to ripstereducation.com. and you can you know, you can go there and you can go to trade recaps and you can study SPY VIX strategy. I explain it in depth. You know, you see how people are literally making living on this strategy, right? No bullshit. And a lot of people argue with me that VIX doesn't work. It does. You know, today's a proof, and every day is proof. There's hundreds of days of proof. All right, guys, so this was a great day on SPY QQQ, right? You know, so this is all about guidance. You're going to trade with me, learn our education, come join. Do not come for alerts. I'm not an alert service. I don't promise to make you money, but I will teach you and make sure you don't lose money. That one I can promise you. I wanted to recap CrowdStrike, but I'll leave it. Running out of the time. We traded it after hours. I guess I'll just spend 2 minutes. So let's look at what was the CrowdStrike. What was my thoughts on CrowdStrike? What did I tell everybody on CrowdStrike? So let's see. Let's go look back at my tweets and then we'll see what I was saying in the community. So the plan was simple, right? So let's look at it. I posted the earnings preview and I told everyone, if we reclaim 13, 300, over 300 bullish, under 300 bearish. So that's fine, you know, so that's fine. In the community, I gave everybody that I will trade versus 300, bearish under, bullish over. Bad luck, I didn't fill early. I did not fill. My orders didn't fill, and you know, I didn't get a good entry, but a lot of traders did. but I did trade that. 350 push to 360 for like $10. I left that lot of money on the table, but that's fine. You know, we have tomorrow. So you can see all this guidance how we traded CRWD. So now why did this happen? Yes, see, definitely earnings are solid. You know, if I show you the earnings on CRWD, we can go here and see what was the earnings. It was a monster earnings, guys. Look at this earning per share, 44% increase year over year, 30% revenue increase, annual recurring revenue 34% increase, all the guidance above consensus. This is a monster earning. Yeah, does it mean it has to run $80? Not really, but do we care? No, we just follow the price. So traders in the community were just trading that, you know, and that's their execution. Daruman traded it, and so I think what happened was a lot of shorts were stuck as well, and a lot of them they got biased and thinking that we might fade after the earnings because of the sell-off, bearish market. They got stuck and they had their shorts at 350, and when it pushed over 350 they covered as well. Tomorrow, now what we watch tomorrow? So tomorrow, guys, on CRWD, so what we look in these cases is what was our previous resistance that can become support. So previous resistance that can become support is basically this area, 338. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong candle. I just need to go to monthly. Yeah, 338, because we are trading after hours. Daily doesn't show you, but we are trading at 368. So we know it can come back to 338 and maybe that acts as a support. Otherwise, we have to use tomorrow is our EMA level, 344s, and let's see what levels develop tomorrow. Right now, it's looking that if it breaks this 360, and then it's going to pull back to 350. So that's what it's looking right now, but we'll see what it does tomorrow, and we will trade it in the community as always. Thanks everyone. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.